Cheers.
This is still on.
It's still on. It's on.
Things like I do Active Directory reviews, I've done SharePoint reviews, Windows build reviews, that kind of thing. And I'm going to have to make a confession right at this point. You can probably gather sort of, from my sweatshirt what I'm about to say next. I am a bit of a Windows fangirl. And in fact, here's a little thing that I made for my, my study. I call this Windows Through the Ages, and I've got a copy of everything apart from Windows ME. So if anyone's got a CD with Windows ME on it, I'd be eternally grateful if you could have, I could have a copy so I could put it on my display. So what am I going to talk about today? First of all, I'm going to introduce the Surface, specifically the Surface with Windows RT, because the new Surface, the Surface Pro, isn't out yet. Then I'm going to talk about Windows RT itself and the differences between it and what you would call standard full-fat Windows. Then I'm going to talk about the use of PowerShell to analyse Windows systems specifically, and also talk about some of the features of PowerShell and .NET. I'm going to talk about the specifics of PowerShell as it relates to Windows RT. And then I'm going to cover some recent research, and that'll be the interesting part of the talk. And so I hope it'll be the interesting part of the talk. I will point out in advance that I have not got any demos today, because I've been in IT too long to want to do demos in public, because always something goes wrong with them. I also noticed when I switched my Surface on to do this presentation that it's in fact wanted to do Windows updates, so if it starts restarting itself in the middle, you'll know why. Yeah, got a demos. Why is this not working? Right, I'm going to have to do this again. Okay, so first of all, what is the Surface? The Surface is obviously a device that doesn't like the clicker very much, this is a Surface. Just trying to hold it up a little bit. It's got approximately the form factor of an iPad, that is a slightly a different shape. Oh, this is not working properly.
Sorry, just give me that. We didn't actually get the mic transferred in time, so just to record your talk.
All right, okay. I don't know that there's going to be a talk, because this doesn't seem to want to work.
There you go. So far.
Right, okay. It doesn't seem to like the projector very much. Oh, this is the wrong slide. Rory, I think I'm going to have to take the laptop and do it on that. Sorry? Okay. All right, seems to start working. Right, okay, so what is the Surface? This is a Surface, and there you see a picture of it from Microsoft's website. You see, notice the one that I've got is black. So the one that they've got there is bright pink. You can get them in some various colours like bright blue and bright yellow. I don't know what it is about Windows devices, but here's a Windows phone, and that's bright blue as well. So they must just be very popular. The Surface is an ultra portable laptop and tablet combination device. It's actually ARM based, so it has an ARM based processor in it. Very unusual for Windows. The first version of Windows really to run on ARM based processors. Why would you want to use the Surface as a test device? Well, I think I could demonstrate it with the fact that I could pick it up with one hand. The Lenovo ThinkPad that I was using before that is obviously a big beast, and it weighs like 2.5 kilograms or something like that. But on the whole, tablets are really very poorly suited to testing, because they don't tend to to run a lot of the tools. They tend to have a kind of cut down, almost like phone-based operating system, like iOS. This one is is entirely different to that. It does actually run what is almost like a full version of Windows, and I'll come to what the differences are between the two of them in a minute. By default and out of the box, it will only run so-called modern user interface apps, by which I mean the ones you get out of the Windows Store, and the ones that used to be called Metro before Microsoft ran into their little problem with the trademark. So sort of, you know, so it will sort of, you know, sort of run those apps, and it will also run other applications, desktop applications, but only those that are actually signed by Microsoft. So in practice, that means that they will run, it runs Microsoft Office, home and personal version, just Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, no, not Access or Outlook. And sort of, you know, so it also runs other Windows sort of, you know, sort of utilities, such as sort of, you know, so the registry editor and the Clippy tool and things like that. We'll see a little bit more of that later on. This is not working.
Sorry, we just asked to clip on. It's just
Right, obviously it's not very impressed with the surface, but at least that's so now I can pick it up and wave it about.
Sorry, we just asked about clip on. Just
Well, guys, just so that sort of, you know, so now I can actually, now it's not actually attached to anything, I can actually sort of, you know, sort of pick you up and pick it up and actually sort of, you know, sort of demonstrate it. This is what this surface actually sort of, you know, sort of looks like. And that's the keyboard coming off, and that's the keyboard going back on. When they actually developed it, there was a picture on the internet of Steve Stanovsky, who's at the time was in charge of the Windows project. He actually put wheels on it and skateboarded on it. And there's also a story going the rounds that somebody actually balanced one on the roof of their car and accidentally drove away with it and then drove over it. And at the end of the day, the sort of, you know, so the surface was actually working. There's a picture of it looking a bit battered. I think Microsoft should have given this person a new surface, and then they could have sort of like demonstrated the sort of the old one. But it obviously doesn't like this projector, but there we go. So I had another picture on the previous slide of the side-on of the thing, but you've actually seen it now. It's got a sort of kickstand on the back of it that actually keeps it sort of, you know, sort of upright. And apparently several $1 million were spent researching the noise that the kickstand makes when it clicks back on. It's supposed to sound like a BMW's door closing. Don't know whether that's true or not. So this little surface runs Windows RT. There will be another version of the surface coming out later this month that actually will run the full-on x86 version of Windows. Windows RT, I find this atypical of Microsoft. They have not done a really tremendously good job of actually publicizing it and actually indicating sort of, you know, sort of what it is. So there's Windows RT, sort of a screenshot of it, sort of, you know, sort of running from sort of, you know, sort of my actual service device myself. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that Windows RT is something to do with Windows Phone and that it's a cut down sort of, you know, sort of mobile phone sort of, you know, sort of type operating system. It is designed for low power, always on appliance type devices, of which the Surface is one. I mean, the Surface, you don't switch it off. It's like an iPad. You'd only, you know, like restart it to get Windows updates. But Windows RT actually is a proper version of Windows. It is not part of the Windows Phone environment. It has a kernel setting on it that actually determines within the ARM kernel, there's 1 byte embedded, and I'll come into this later on, that tells it sort of, you know, sort of what code it can run. And in the context of Windows RT, it's only the code signed by Microsoft, as I said before. It also has a UEFI secure boot. Now, here's another misapprehension that people seem to be sort of, you know, sort of under. I don't know where it came from. People seem to be under the impression that all Windows 8 devices have this UEFI secure boot and you can't turn it off on these type of devices. That's not sort of, you know, sort of the case for general full-fat Windows devices. If you want to turn it off and run some sort of an insecure, buggy version of something else, you're welcome to do so. That does not apply to Windows RT devices. So it has this UEFI secure boot on it, and there's no exploit that I'm aware of at the moment to actually get that turned off. So you couldn't install, God forbid, Linux onto your Surface, even if you actually sort of, you know, sort of wanted to. The whole reason behind this sort of, you know, sort of this decision by Microsoft is twofold. Firstly, it's to preserve sort of, you know, sort of battery power. This device will run. If you read the tech press, it says that you get 9 hours battery life out of it. in fact, that's not true. I think that you only get 9 hours battery life out of it if you spend your time looping videos constantly. I find I get 12 to 13 hours out of it, which broadly I think is along the lines of what you would get from an iPad. So as badly written desktop apps are notorious for draining battery, that's why they're sort of, you know, they're restricted. The other reason is, as you know, you're all IT people, Windows over the years has been notorious for acquiring malware because it's just such a big platform. And because you can only install stuff signed by Microsoft and Metro apps that are, whoops, I used that term, shoot me now, modern apps that are actually distributed through the Windows Store, you can't get that level of malware on the machine. Also, sort of, you know, sort of for user protection, there are certain settings that are not easy to disable through the actual sort of, you know, sort of GUI on the tablet, which we'll see sort of, you know, sort of in a moment. So things like, for example, you can't turn the Windows firewall off. You can't. You have to get Windows updates. It won't let you sort of, you know, sort of turn them off. Well, it will actually because I've turned mine off. But and it's got Windows Defender on it, and you can't disable that sort of either. So they've taken as many sort of, you know, sort of measures as they can to actually sort of, you know, sort of protect the sort of, you know, sort of the end user. What really surprised me when I first got the Surface and turned it on and went into desktop mode was, oh, look, sort of, you know, so does that look like Windows? It does to me. Registry editor, remote desktop, sort of, you know, sort of connection, local services, really is a very Windows-like sort of, you know, sort of environment. It's very surprising what you actually get. I found it very surprising that considering that they wanted to make this a cut-down environment, that they actually allowed free access to things like the registry editor. I don't really see why they would have done that. I have a funny feeling it might be because this device was rushed to market in the face of sort of, you know, sort of the huge success that Apple have had with tablets, and therefore that they've, you know, in a number of ways had to hurry it along a little bit. Having said that, sort of, you know, that you're not supposed to be able to disable these things, I trivially managed to disable all these things on sort of, you know, my device when I was testing it for this talk. So, for example, you can't go into the services and turn the firewall off directly. However, if you use a netshut command, you can just do netshut firewall off, and it just goes off, and sort of, you know, and so there you are. Very brief introduction to PowerShell for those people that sort of, you know, that don't know it. How many people have used PowerShell before? Well, just about everybody. So I obviously don't have to do very much of an introduction to PowerShell. PowerShell's been around since sort of, you know, sort of since 2006. I've found that it's been surprisingly, maybe of late it's become rather better known. But when I was working for the big corporate, I used to have to try to get the Windows team to actually use it. And they were very wedded in their ways to doing things sort of, you know, in the old style, you know, you do it through the GUI type of way. They're going to get sort of, you know, sort of a nasty shock because for anyone who's not been living in a box in the ground sort of, you know, sort of for the last 6 months would know that Windows Server 2012 came out at the tail end of last year. By default, it doesn't install a GUI at all. So the way of managing it by default is PowerShell. And there you can see sort of, you know, sort of PowerShell. That's actually running on a Windows Professional machine on my desktop at home. And that's just get service. There's over 2,000 native commandlets for PowerShell, and there's a massive number of sort of, you know, sort of add-ons for it. So, for example, if you install the remote server administration tools, you can then import the Active Directory sort of, you know, sort of module into PowerShell, and you can fully access sort of, you know, sort of all the power sort of, you know, sort of that's sitting sort of behind that. So, for example, when PowerShell first came out, it was actually an add-on for, or not exactly an add-on, it was part of Exchange Server 2007, which I actually used to sort of, you know, administer. So we Exchange admins got to sort of, you know, sort of to see it before the actual proper Windows admins did. Maybe the most powerful feature, however, of PowerShell is the fact that sort of, you know, so out of PowerShell you can call .NET and you can use all the functionality of sort of, you know, sort of .NET. Where I find PowerShell to be sort of, you know, the most useful as far as a pen testing tool is concerned is actually on sort of kind of like internal audit style things, which we do sometimes. So we call them internal build reviews. Here you can see a script that I've actually been writing sort of, you know, sort of myself. And you see that it's calling this sort of the Active Directory modules. And then what it is doing is actually scrutinizing group policy. So it's actually looking for things like the password complexity sort of, you know, of the system. I haven't actually quite finished writing that script yet. I did promise I was going to demonstrate it in this talk. When I do finish writing it, it will actually sort of, you know, sort of be on my sort of, you know, sort of my blog. I think the significance, the great significance of PowerShell as far as internal reviews is concerned, is that whereas we find when we do external reviews, external penetration tests, we come across Windows and generally Linux in fairly equal quantities. When you hit an internal environment, they're nearly always Active Directory, and they're nearly always Windows on the workstation. So you probably see 10 Windows machines for every Unix one that you do. So this thing becomes very useful. The other thing to say about PowerShell that's very useful as a pen testing tool is that it's extremely ubiquitous because it comes on every single modern sort of Windows system that you've got. So whereas, for example, an audit department, an internal audit or internal security department might start sort of throwing their heels up if they see that users have got Python installed everywhere. This thing comes in sort of under the radar. I've never known anyone really to make any kind of comment about it at all. Here's a code that I wrote for or actually I will admit I didn't entirely write this, and I'm afraid I wanted to give the person that did originally write it credit for it. Then I've had it for so long I wasn't able to find it. So whoever you are out on the internet that wrote the start of this, I'm very sorry to have stolen your code. I've made significant modifications to it myself. And what I'll show you at the end of the talk is what the actual output looks like to this. But you could take this script, for example, and run it against a range of IP addresses, against what we used to call a subnet in the old days, and actually get a list of all the systems back. So again, this is I don't know whether you can see this on the screen. This is how we would use the Active Directory module. See there at the top, it's doing import module Active Directory and import module group policy. So that's two useful things. That's the script that you saw on the previous page. As well as what I describe as this kind of internal audit style of report where PowerShell can be useful, there's people, cleverer programmers than me, have written a lot of other really good utilities for it. If anyone's interested in PowerShell and using it with the Surface and using it for that kind of pen testing thing, there's a really good project called Project Nishang. I've put the link to it in the slides. What he has actually done is is write a suite of pen testing tools written entirely in PowerShell. There you can see one of them actually up and running on the screen. Invoke ping sweep. Basically, it takes a range of email addresses, as you can see. Internet addresses, as you can see along the top, and it's performing a really crude port scan on it. Now, obviously, that doesn't have anything like the functionality of Nmap. You could, in theory, I think, write Nmap, rewrite it completely in PowerShell. Though one of the things that that does tend to be not quite so good about PowerShell is that a lot of the networking libraries are not free, so you would have to buy them commercially. So PowerShell and Windows RT is starting to get onto the interesting part of this now. I hope it's interesting. All I can say about that is so near and yet so far, because when I got the Surface and I thought, it's got PowerShell on it, this is going to be a fantastic little testing tool. Host.runspace.language mode, that's the default run space for PowerShell on Windows RT, and you cannot change it. Well, you can't easily change it. You see it's set to constrained language. That really does it. It doesn't completely ruin it as a testing tool because you can still use all the native commandlets. So you can use get service and get process and get WMI object and all that good stuff. But there's several things that you can't do with it. You can't use .NET. So that's a whole huge thing right out of the question. You can't do any kind of importation of binary modules, where that really kind of ruins this the tool as well. So I thought to myself, this is going to be the most boring talk in the history of the universe, because look, here's my build script. So I tried to run my build script on my Surface. That would run in vanilla Windows, but on the RT device, it just doesn't doesn't do the trick at all. But then I was saying to my husband, who, as I mentioned before, is also a tester, I was saying the attack surface of this. The attack surface of the Surface is actually so I'm glad somebody got that. The attack surface of the Surface is actually huge, because it's got the registry editor, because you could attach remote debugs to it, because it's actually really proper Windows. And I said to him, we're out for a walk. I said, someone's going to hack into this sooner or later. I went back to sort of, my office and typed in Windows RT security, and bang, I saw that in fact Windows RT had been hacked. Is the vanilla Surface a useful testing tool? Well, in my personal estimation, not really. It's a beautiful tablet when it works, and it's really, really, really useful, and you can work on it in a way that's hard to work on an iPad, and it does many, many things. It's a great leisure device and quite a good productivity device, but it's not a good pen testing tool because you just can't get the you can't do the things with it you need to do to test. Cracking Windows RT. I went to this website, belongs to a guy called Cloaker. Kudos to him. I could never have written this type of binary exploit. It's not my field. But he wrote this, and then there was a load of people on XDA developers who are actually doing a lot of work to actually develop this more fully. So what did he actually do? As I said earlier on, there is one byte within the ARM kernel that tells the operating system what level of code signing it actually has to be able to to execute code. So on vanilla Windows, it's 0, which means you can run any damn piece of malware that you like. On the Surface and other Windows RT devices, 8, which means that the code has either got to be Metro apps distributed through the Windows Store, or it's got to be code signed by by Microsoft. So what this guy actually did was, it was actually quite ironic the way that he did it. He couldn't actually directly debug this on the Surface for just the reason that I've just said. He couldn't get any binaries to run on it. But the Surface, the Windows RT was so similar to genuine Windows 8 that what he was actually able to do was take the Windows debugger, run it on Windows 8, see where that code was in the x86 kernel, and then identify that it was going to be in a similar place in the ARM kernel. And then when when he had actually done that, he was then able to attach a debugger to it. This is his exploit code. He inserted this into winslv.dll, and then you press the down volume button on the Surface, and bang, your device is is rooted. And at that point, you can then run you can run any type of binary executable that you wish. However, there are several provisos to to this. Do not think that that you can go buy a Surface, root it, and then that you'll be able to get your copy of Photoshop for x86 and put it onto it. Probably all of you know this, but it's an ARM processor, so you have to. The code has to be compiled for ARM. The corollary to that is that because you've got to cross-compile it, you need to have the source code for it in the first place. And as no commercial organisation is going to potentially piss Microsoft off by supplying commercial code that's been hacked about for an ARM processor that they don't want you to run, I don't think it's very likely that any commercial organisation is going to bring out code for that. Maybe Google will. They seem to hate Microsoft these days. The other thing to bear in mind is that the hack, as it currently stands, is not memory persistent. So if you restart your Surface, you have to run the file again. You don't have to go through this process anymore because the guys on XDA Developers Forum have actually developed a way to get the exploit onto it just by running a little batch file. In order to be able to do that, you have to have a developer's license for the Windows Store because you have to run the Metro app, the side-loaded Metro app, in order to run the thing that gets the memory offset that enables you to run the exploit in the first place. But at the moment, you don't even have to pay for a developer's license for the Windows Store. They're just really desperate to get developers onto it. This really surprised me. What would you have thought Microsoft's reaction to all of this would have been? I would have thought they'd have been furious about it because they've been vaunting the security of the device and blah, 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 blah. And they made a huge fuss about the guys that hacked the Kinect. This was their reaction. This really surprised me. We implored the ingenuity of the folks who worked this out, and the hard work they did to document it will not guarantee these approaches will be there in future releases, by which they probably mean that they're going to run it through Windows Update at some point. I think that's true. It's not really a security vulnerability as such, because you need this developer's license, you need to be logged onto the thing as an administrative user, and then you need to deliberately run this batch file. So it's more like a rootkit or a jailbreaking exploit than it is an actual true security sort of, mechanism. End users are not going to want to sort of do this. I can guarantee you that my mother, for example, who's got a Surface, is not going to start running sort of batch files that she got off xdadeveloper.com and then start cross-compiling her programs using Visual Studio. She's just not going to to do it. So now we've got the little device jailbroken. What can we do with it now? Is it a good testing tool now? Woohoo! Putty, cross-compiled for ARM. That's not supposed to be possible. There's now a whole community of people that we're calling the Free Win RT project, all based around the XDA Developers Forum, and people are coming up with new programs, new desktop programs that we've got to run on the device every day. Yesterday it was Python's turn. They've now got Python working through it. Someone's working on Java. The really big thing from the point of view of pen testing is going to be to get WinPCAP working, because if we can get WinPCAP working, we can get Nmap working. I'm working on just doing just a little code highlighting project, because I'm not the world's greatest C developer, which is what you have to use for this kind of thing. One more program that people have got working. Whoops. Dosbox. Dosbox, you can get. We can now have Quake 2. We've got Quake 2 running on it. We've got Doom running on it. The other amusing thing that they've got working on it is they've got the box virtualization software, and someone's installed Windows 95 on it. So you can have Windows 95 on your Surface. I think they also got Windows 98 to work. They couldn't get Windows XP to work, with the reason being that although when you look at the spec of the Surface, it actually looks as though it would run better programs than it does. When you actually come to do virtualization and emulation, it puts a huge extra overhead on the processor, because the ARM processor is having to emulate an x86 processor, so it doesn't quite run the things that that you would expect it to do. And we also see, I never actually managed to work this out, whether it was a feature, whether the developer that did the exploit deliberately wrote this into it, or whether it was just an accidental side effect. But now you'll notice that on the screen, where we had constrained language before, we now have full language. So now we can run all the programs that in the Nishang project. We can run as many .NET things as as we like. So the PowerShell for the Windows RT device has just become a whole lot more useful. One thing to bear in mind, however, about it is that you are still somewhat limited by it, with the reason being that some of the best modules for importing into PowerShell are actually owned by Microsoft, and they're not going to be be releasing the source code of it anytime soon, I wouldn't imagine. So, for example, you can't, that little Active Directory script that I wrote won't run on a Windows RT device. However, the build review script will actually work for time. Okay, so just very, very briefly, this is how you go about cross-compiling programs for ARM. You need the full fat version of Visual Studio Professional to do it, unfortunately. It's very expensive, but I think they do a student license, cheap student license. It doesn't. I tried it with Visual Studio Express, which was what I was using before, and it didn't work. You can download an evaluation copy of this for 90 days. So all you do is that here's a little hello world program that I wrote. You just simply then go into your configuration manager, build settings, set it to release. For some reason, debug doesn't work properly. And set the active solution platform to be ARM, and then you just cross-compile it. That's in the theory of it. In practice, you run into a whole lot of problems. You have to muck around with the compiler for hours and hours and hours, but then that's par for the course. One more thing to mention is that there are two classes of program that you don't have to cross-compile for ARM. Because anything that's written in .NET 4.5, because it uses CLR, you don't have to cross-compile it. It's cross-platform by its very nature. The other type of application that would work on the ARM platform, because again it uses CLR, is Silverlight. But as they've not released Silverlight for and they don't seem to know what they're doing with Silverlight anyway, then you can't run that class of. People are also coming up with, this is the unofficial Windows RT, free Windows RT store, which one of the guys from XDA is hosting on his website. It's hugely longer than that. I took this screenshot sort of, maybe about a week ago. Since then, sort of, there's a raft more sort of, sort of programs for it. You can see Notepad++ is an extremely sort of, sort of useful program to actually have. So I mentioned before sort of, sort of the build tool. This is the results of sort of, the build tool actually run against the surface itself. So you can see on there, my little surface is called Dragon. And you see he's running sort of, sort of he's part of a work group. He's running Windows RT. I forgot to mention one other limitation of Windows RT. It's not strictly relevant to this talk, but you can't join a Windows RT device to a domain at the moment. I've been having a look at how you might be able to hack around to do it. I've actually managed to get the add to domain button to appear. I can't actually make it do anything yet, but there's registry settings for all of that. There we can see sort of, what hotfixes he's actually got sort of, sort of installed on him. I was going to change that and make it to sort of, sort of what patches are not installed on it, so that I can actually sort of, sort of like, obviously that's one of the things you would do during a build review is to actually query what patches are actually sort of, sort of missing on it. More, these are sort of, all the services sort of, sort of running on him. So these are all part of the build scripts. And if anyone's interested, I will put that on my website. So, is the jailbroken surface a useful testing tool when it's working? This is my sort of, sort of my setup with it at home. I had the surface attached to sort of, sort of to an external monitor. You get a VGA adapter from it, buy it from the Microsoft store. They're very expensive, £35 each. You also get an HDMI adapter for it. And I actually sat there when I was writing this presentation for a whole day, and I basically plugged he's got a full-size USB port, so I plugged the little USB hub in, put the keyboard and mouse onto it, and I sat there and used it as a PC for a whole sort of, afternoon. And after a little bit of time, I didn't even notice that I was working on the Surface sort of, at all anymore. I think it's now sort of, sort of a super little tool. If we can just get sort of, sort of WinPCAP and Mmap fired up, then I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be a reasonable substitute to take out on site, at least for sort of, sort of kind of like limited tests. Conclusion, I love my Surface when it works. Any questions? Oh, go ahead. Runtime. It's, for some confusing reason, they've given it the name of the operating system the same name as the actual underlying development environment to it. Yes?
You said that both yourself and Microsoft feel that the kernel issue that isn't really a vulnerability because you need a developer's license. Other than review, what's to stop someone signing that process and releasing it through the Metro store?
The fact that they're keeping a pretty close eye on that. Apparently each app that goes into the Windows Store actually gets sort of, sort of put through a code review and virus checking sort of, sort of process. So they are trying to sort of show some control around that. As far as getting your own developer license and using it to do it, as far as I can see at the moment, there's absolutely nothing to stop you doing it. I was kind of hoping there wasn't going to be anyone from Microsoft here today, just in case they take my developer license away for talking about it in public.
Okay.
Any more questions? Oh, go ahead, Rory.
Do you know if that code review is actually like a Microsoft developer going through your code, or is it automated?
I don't know. I don't think they've ever made the process sort of, sort of very clear. I guess from what they said about it that it's actually a manual process, and I would kind of hope that it would be a manual process because I don't have any great faith in the fact that any, automated. I mean, I've seen code review tools in operation before, and as Rory would be able to tell you, sort of, so they do generate a lot of false positives and miss a lot of stuff as well. So I guess it's a manual process. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, going three times? Oh.
I've got a quick question about PowerShell.
Sure.
So you have to sign the program, don't you, to get it to run?
By default, it comes with an execution policy of restricted, which means that scripts won't run on it, but you just do a set execution policy to change that to, you can either change it to remote signed or you can change it to digital signature only or something. And most people, the very first thing they do with PowerShell is just change it to unrestricted.
So if you upload a PowerShell program to, say, a workstation to run a build review, I mean, what's your preferred method to getting that to run in a lockdown environment?
Well, I would just set the first thing that I always do is actually just set the sort of, you know, sort of the signing mode to unrestricted to be able to just run any script that sort of, you know, sort of I wanted to. If I was a more careful person, I would sort of acquire digital certificates and sign all my code myself and sort of, I'm sure as a security professional I probably should, but I don't, and I don't know anybody else that does either. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and I'm